message. The future is not set.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And yes, AV guy, we are starting now. So hi everybody, I am EvilMog. This is password cracking methods. This talk was born out of my getting tired of ranting on how to crack passwords on IRC, and so I figured let's get some actual real captive audiences, because why not? I don't have a bio slide because I'm not that vain anymore, but I am a member of Team Hashcat. I crack stuff for X-Force, and I theoretically work for IBM until they see this talk and they fire me. But, you know, hey, that's all right. On that, let's get straight into what this is. So, when people talk about hashes and password cracking, first we need to go talk about the basics. So what are hashes and KDFs? So hashes and key derivation functions are one way. So that means, in theory, you should not be able to take things. You know, if I hash something, I shouldn't be able to reverse it easily. They're deterministic. You hash something one way, and it's you get the same results running through the same hash function every time, ideally. Arbitrary input should produce fixed output. So what this means is, if I go hash something of, say, I don't know, 400 characters long with MD5, it's going to output 32 bits or 32 characters of hex every time. It's not going to change. So this means automatically hashes are noisy. They're also collision resistant in theory, although not really anymore. And when I say collision resistant, who here knows what a collision is? A couple of you. All right, those who don't, a collision is, say I take CypherCon and then I take EvilMog, I run them through the hash function, and they should not come out with the same result. So that makes these things ideal for passwords. So this is some important things to understand about hashes. Also, the cool part about hashes is a significantly random output should cause a random or a small should result from a small change of input. Or put a different way, if I take password 1 and password 1 2, the hashes should look completely different due to the avalanche effect. So that makes this, you know, from a mathematical perspective, in theory, hard to go reverse. Hashes are used in the generation of keys. They're used to identify changes and differences between inputs. So like your GitHub, for example, SHA-1, you can use for determining here's the output of a commit. And they're also used to secure data in a verifiable but irreversible way, aka password hashes. So this is our basic bits for those who understand about hashes. So we're getting some concepts here. So, if you look at MD5, we were talking about this avalanche effect earlier. So, MD5 of password, you'll look like it's 5F, D, C, 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 whatever. You notice how it's way different from MD5 of password 1. So, we need to find out what this 2C103 piece is. So, all password cracking is doing is basically generating dumb guesses, running them through a hash function, and checking their output. It's like a check and guess, what have you. Oh, for those of you in the back, feel free to sit. We got lots of room up front. Don't worry about hiding in the back. You won't offend anybody. So the point of this whole thing is we're going to go find out what password is, right? So we hash password. We hash password 1. We hash password 123 exclamation mark with a capital. It matches our random question mark. Bingo, hash cracked. Congratulations, you're a hash cracker. This is the absolute basics of Hashcat. The other important thing to understand is Hashcat is absolutely stupid in the hands of an unskilled operator. It does exactly what you tell it to. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is the old days of Hashcat, we didn't have all these funky modes. It was just a straight combine a left and a right side. So on that note, we get back into some psychology before I get into actual cracking pieces. So who here thinks people make good passwords? That's the result I expected. Who here thinks people can make unique things? Probably not. I can't think of crap. I'm not remembering 400 passwords. You're not remembering 400 passwords. So all my passwords can be the same rough common format. And by the way, I know your parents have been telling you you're beautiful, unique snowflakes. None of you are. You all think exactly the same when it comes to password generation. Most people think of like, most common password is season in the year, because that's just the way things happen. Also, humans are notoriously bad at listening to instructions. Like, even as hackers, we put up millions of signs and you get the same million questions up at registration. We think the rules don't apply to us. The whole point of this is people are the weakest link. And if you understand how people generate passwords, you can crack them. You know, people choose common patterns. They reuse passwords. How many here use the same password in all your sites? Yeah, shame on you. Don't you have a password manager? No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to go shame people here. The other thing is people iterate on old passwords. So say I've got the super secure password of CypherCon 2025. What's my password in 2026? Exactly. I might add an exclamation mark on it if I'm feeling spicy, but that's about it. So, important things to understand about psychology. There's a concept called stemming. So you take the password of password123 exclamation mark. There's some good stems in there of pass, password, and word. There's chunking, so there's taking portions of the password. So password 123 becomes password and 123. So what kind of patterns do we see on this? You see password, we see 123 exclamation mark. That turns into a Hashcat mask of digit, 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 question mark. Or we convert things like birthdays, phone numbers into common patterns. These are the things password crackers are really actually looking for. Forget the fancy tools. The secret to winning Hashcat, or Crack If You Can every year, is the old Mark I brain. If you can see things in a pattern, you can probably turn that into an attack technique. So we'll take like a new word, for example, we'll add 123 to the end. We'll add 2340, etc., etc., etc. Now, the counterpart to this is the heat death of the universe. None of us are immortal, and some of these crack jobs will last longer than you and I will ever live, or my hash rig will ever run. And this key space goes up. So basically, hash cracking is like playing Battleship with an infinite key space. So with an 8 character, okay, it's doable. As you increase the character count, the key space goes up. Now, sure, we are cracking 18 character passwords, but we're not doing it by brute force. We're doing it purely because people use really crappy patterns. A significantly random password with high entropy generated by a machine at 12 or 14 characters is more than sufficient to outlast the entire universe, assuming there's no major break in the cryptographic algorithm. And you're not using NTLM. Which, by the way, NTLM is really just MD4 with UTF-16 character encoding. Anyways, so common hash types you're going to see. There's good old-fashioned landman. It's DES-based. You can brute force that with a laptop in about an hour, give or take. The NT hash, which is basically just MD4, you'll see that in Windows, it's mode 1000. There's the DES-based attacks in NTLM version 1, version 2, the various Kerberos. These are common things you look for as a Windows pen tester, but they're not really relevant to the rest of this talk. It's just more as an info for the rest of you. Do we have a lot of Windows pen testers in the house? No, maybe a few. All right, so the important attacks we're going to talk about here is brute force. So the nice part about brute force is you're guaranteed to hit a crack. It's going to take forever. They're highly inefficient, theoretically perfect, but a massive key space. So what do we do instead of a brute force? We use masks. So what you can do is, who here knows the 304 rule? The 304 rule, most corporate places implement, is you have to have an uppercase, a lowercase, a special, or a digit, or any 3 combinations of those 4. This actually reduces the key space you have to attack. Because if I rule out all the lowercase, or all the all uppercase, or all the ones that don't meet that password rule, I can generate a series of masks that will give me a far reduced key space. Now, I'm not saying get rid of that rule because that rule is highly effective because A, users don't listen to instructions, but it's one of those trade-offs in security in that technically it does reduce the key space we need to go to attack. And so instead of spending all the time on an 8-character attack, I can reduce that in the Windows world to roughly 2/3, give or take, given what you take out. The other cool part is you do Markov. So instead of going from AAA to AAB, C, etc., we'll try the most common passwords first, and the Hashcat has that built in. So that's an important part about doing mask attacks. So where this comes into is we will try, there's a whole series of masks called the Pathwell masks that are basically the most common mask patterns used in corporate up to about 14 characters. So we'll go show you how to actually use this methodology later, but this is more a theory for how we crack passwords. The important one I love is Combinator. So a bit of a history lesson. Back in the day, Hashcat did not have a brute force or a dictionary input method at all. It didn't get that till Hashcat Plus. Back in the day, you had a left side and you had a right side, and you crammed them together, left up to the right until they had a match. And so that's what we can now call a Combinator. And so the only way to actually do an attack with that was we use the technique called fingerprint, which I'll get into next with the expander. So this is actually highly effective because on your left side, I could have, say, password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, change me, etc. On the right, I could have 1, 2, 3, 777, ABC, word, the rest of it. And that creates candidates like password 1, 2, 3, password 777, password ABC, etc. The key space is simply the candidates on the left times the candidates on the right times the number of unique salts. And this is actually what we'll use for a lot more Active Directory attacks. So people asked me earlier what my favorite word list was. I said it was RockU, but I actually kind of lied. It's not really RockU per se. It's RockU run through expander, which I'll show you next, and then you apply it to a left and a right side on Combinator, and it's far more effective than RockU on its own against a corporate Active Directory attack set. So we also have hybrid. This one's really fun. So say you crack a bunch of hashes. Okay, I get there with plain text out. I have the left side being a word list. I have the right side being a mask. So say I got like password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let me in, change me. The right side I've got just a question D, question D, question D, which means try all the digits. That gives me password 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 3, 3, etc. So if you take known cracked passwords and then run them through things like expander or even just on their own and do hybrid on the left and the right side, you get more cracks. So the key space on this is number of candidates on the left, key space of the mask, number of the unique salts, lather, rinse, repeat. Also, I apologize, my voice is dying, hence the water breaks. So, expander. God, I love this tool, for the record. So we'll take a string, and I apologize for the blatant advertising. So we have X-force. Split that into chunks. So we have X, XF, XFOR, XFORC, etc. You rotate all the chunks to the left. It's up against 4CX, etc. I'm not going to pronounce all the rest of it. It repeats for every chunk. You cram all those together into a giant word list, and then you run that through Combinator on the left and the right sides. That leads to an attack we call fingerprint. So, remember I said Hashcat only had one mode? That is now called mode A1. So your left side and your right side of the word lists, you basically combine them together. So Pure Hate, Martin Bose, aka Can't Computer now, invented this technique, where we basically take an expander and we apply those to a word list, and then we combine the left and the right side. So in order to actually execute this, first thing you do is you compile expander. Now there's a trick that we don't tell you about. Expander, by default, caps out at 4 characters in the Hashcat utilities. Go open the C file, find 4, replace it with 8, recompile. I know it's real simple, but do you know when people don't actually recompile the Hashcat utilities or change the source code values? You can tweak them infinitely, and that's the secret to unlocking all the magic. It's kind of like a clue switch. So you take your word list, you run it through cut. Now this is assuming you're going straight from a pot file, so we'll cut on the colon delimiter. We'll use -F2-. This is important for one very simple reason. Most people stop their cut on the first colon, and if there's a colon in the password, you're going to miss the rest of it. Also, if you want to mess with the password cracker, put colons in your passwords, commas because they'll mess with the CSVs, or make your password $ left bracket, or sorry, $ hex left bracket, a bunch of hex and right bracket. It will mess with every single hash cracker known to mankind. Yes, I'm a professional troll. How can you tell? Anyways, so you pull this out of the hash file, you pipe it through expander.bin, you pipe it through sort unique, and you create a candidate.exp file. Now, from here you run Hashcat. So we're going, hashcat.bin, we're on mode 1000, which is NTLM. We're going to specify the hash file we're cracking. Use mode A1, left side's going to be can.exp, right side's can.exp. Then you go back and you repeat. We call this the expander grind. You run this about 20 times when you're doing an Active Directory assessment, and then you move on to the next basis technique. Because you'll just keep getting hashes pop out of this. So if you're participating in Crack the Con in the Street Division, this works heavily. Hint, hint. So, the next one, there's a tool called cutb. Now, this is lost art, because the guy who wrote this, Rants by Chort, his website disappeared. Go figure, he wrote it in 2012. It magically went bye-bye. So this little script is a gold mine. What it does is cutb will take password chunks out of the middle of a password, starting from the left, starting from the right, and it will basically do something similar to Expander, but not quite. So this little script will just go start from the left to the right and everything in between. You combine those together, and then sort unique it, and then you'll put this can.cutb file. And by the way, all these will be on my GitHub, which I'll put near the end if you want to copy the scripts. They probably need some tweaking, but ChatGPT wrote half the code. Actually, no, I wrote it, which is worse. So yeah, you make your bash script, you prep your word list, you run the bash script on your word list, run Hashcat. Then what you'll do is you'll run the A6 hybrid mode. So you take the output from cutb, you tell it all the characters of question A, so all possible character sets. The tac I in here is actually using incremental mode. So if you look at line 5, you go hashcat.bin mode 1000. Tac I means increment. Use hash file 1000, the hash you're attacking with. Mode A6, the can.cutb file you prepared. Then question A, question A, question A, question A. What increment means is it starts with 1 question A, goes to 2 question A's, 3 question A's, and 4 question A's. Now, a problem with this, if you use distributed systems like Hashtopolis or HashView is another one, Hashcat does not support skip and limit when you're using increment. So you got to manually split your hash lists out when you're doing this. So this only works with a massive GPU, which now we're all going to cloud with tiny ones. So here be dragons. The A7 means the question A is on the left, the cut B is on the right, and you just repeat the step a couple of times until hashes stop pouring out. So not to be outdone, Adam wrote a tool. Jen Stube, the original author of Hashcat, like the king, grand poobah of everything, he wrote a tool called Prince, which, if I remember right, is probably probability chain infinite something or other. I just know it as Prince processor. So what you do is you take RockU, you download it. Now Prince works off entropy, which is fantastic for us. So what you do is you'll shuffle the RockU data list. And every time you shuffle it and pipe it through Prince, you get new candidates. So we'll shuffle RockU, we'll pipe it into Prince processor after you compile it, make sure you compile it. Then we'll pipe it into Hashcat. We'll specify mode 1000, we use attack and NTLM. We'll use the dictionary mode. We'll tell it our hash list, and then we'll generate 100,000 random rules. Why 100,000 random rules? Because I'm lazy and I'm not creative. We'll specify debug mode 4, and we'll tell it a debug file. We'll wait, collect some cracks, give it 20 minutes, an hour, however long you feel like waiting. Go for a beer, go to bed. I don't really care. Just come back to it eventually. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that debug file. We're going to take out everything left of the first colon from debug.log, sort it, put it to a candidate list. What that means is take all the pre-initial candidates that were cracked, because we're going to reuse those for something else. Then we're going to grab the modified rule. So when you use a rule modifies a word. So like, say I have W0 or the word of WORD. I might have a rule that replaces all the O's with zeros, as an example. So we're basically going to be modifying words. So we're going to collect all the random rules we generated, and we're going to put those also in a debug file, along with the modified rules, or words. Then all we're going to do is run Hashcat with the candidate that we copied out of the debug and the rules we randomly generated, and all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of cracks that you didn't have to think about. It's like the cheat mode. I once did crack the con with nothing but this, a GTX 1080, and a repeat bash script, and I went and grabbed beer, and I came in like 5th. So, I have a bunch of scripts that I wrote that automate this whole process. I call fingercut. I combine the cutb with the expander system. Yes, this QR code is not phishing. If you are taking pictures, it goes to my GitHub. I swear to God, I will not phish you. I'm not paid enough for that. Take your pictures while I grab my water. All right. So on that, here is the super secret sauce. Why you are all here at my talk. So grab a tool like Cool, Crunch, or Wordsmith. These are all tools to generate a word list on your target. You're going to run Purple Rain Rock You or another relevant dictionary like Prince Processor, Shuffle, Debug Mode. Do some basic general cracking. Extract the rules and candidates from debug mode. That's what we call raking. You're on Hashcat based on the results of step 3. Cool, we're going to extract all the candidates. Then all we're going to do is run expander cutb on those candidates, and we're going to rinse and repeat this for about 20 times. Once you're done that, you run hybrid mode A6 and A7 on your candidates, same deal. Repeat that multiple times. Once you've done that, go back to step 7, repeat it again. Extract the candidates, run those through Purple Rain, start back at step 5, run the captured rules and candidates, run the remaining large dictionaries, and then restart back at the beginning. If you follow this methodology, you can do this almost in autopilot with an LLM running it for you and not have to think. And this will actually win you contests if you have enough GPUs. This is the patented EvilMog I'm lazy secret technique. Feel free to take pictures. And that is it for the actual presentation in a whopping 21 minutes, which means you guys can ask as many questions as you want for the remaining 9. So the question was, what about slow hashes? This does not work on slow hashes. I suck at slow hashes. I'm only good at fast hashes because I'm lazy. Oh, so that's a good question. How about if it locks you out or two-factor? Hash cracking is inherently offline versus online hashing. So I'm not talking to a login server. I have dumped the Active Directory domain list, or I've got access to the hashes in a raw form. There's no network traffic, so that is irrelevant. None of this technique works even remotely on online hashing. Absolutely. The question was, can I go back to the slide with the QR code? Fingercut. This also has a bunch of other random EvilMog hash cracking scripts. I kind of update it whenever I get bored. Some of them are good, some of them are terrible. Some of them work, some don't. No warranties, don't sue me. Any more random questions? Cool. And yes, I was on... No question. Okay. And yes, I was on Darknet Diaries. Yes, I do get involved in other shenanigans. Yes, I do win Hacker Jeopardy. So any other question for me is completely fair game. How does this change for Wi-Fi? So Wi-Fi is heavily salted. However, this is a fun one. Who knew that MS-CHAP v2 hashes in an EAP environment are actually NTLM version 1 under the hood? It's really DES-based, which means the NTLM version 1 multi-tool completely works. Also, fun fact, if you can get a NTLM hash to an environment that runs MS-CHAP v2, you can authenticate to that wireless network with just the hash and not the actual password, due to the hash equivalencies and that particular format. So MS-CHAP v2 is very fun.
What was the history of the exploitation of RunQ? Do you know the story
So the question was, do you know the history of Rocky? Honestly, I have no idea. All I know is one day it showed up and we started using it and it was effective. It was the first major real clear text credential breach because they weren't encrypting their passwords. I can't for the life of me remember. Also, I'm not a fan of the new updated Rocktastics and all the other various integrations that aim to be like a 50 gig word list. The optimal word list size is about 100 to 200 megs. The 1 gig's kind of pushing it. Anything higher than that's just either full of junk, email addresses, or people just inflating their numbers. Any other questions?
When you run this, I'm assuming you run this technique against like Fortune 500 companies or whatever. What's your like crack percentage?
So the question is, what's my average crack percentage? Honestly, it depends on the environment. Most modern Fortune 100s tend to be a little better than most. However, I do a lot of small, medium business, smaller enterprise, and my average, if you discount machine hashes, is about 60%, 60 to 70 over the course of 3 days. So the question is, who are the biggest offenders? Honestly, everybody is terrible. The only one that's not, believe it or not, are porn companies. They tend to actually have their stuff wired tight.
Are you handle companies that have a strong password policy, like 15 characters or more? Do you do any different from your own?
So the question is, do I know when it comes to the password policy 15 characters or more and do anything different? Honestly, if they're 15 characters or more, I'm doing a lot of combinator, but realistically, I'm very opportunistic. Most companies, if they deploy that, they have problems with user resets more than anything else, and so people will start taking 2 8-character passwords and cramming them together with like an exclamation mark in between. So if you do a long password policy, give your employees a password manager or else they're going to find ways around it.
How relevant are rainbow tables?
The question is, how relevant are rainbow tables? The answer is complicated. Depends on the hash type. For NTLM version 1, they're not anymore due to various techniques like salting, etc. They're highly effective for landman still, and that's really about it. The reason why landman was important is back in the day, Windows used to store both the landman and the NTLM hash. So you could crack the landman hashes and use those to go crack the NTLM because landman was only stored in uppercase. That's the only real reason why they're important. Generally, they are slow and expensive compared to using GPUs. Anyone else? Yeah, in the back there. Hey. I love this question. So here's the fun part about NIST. The question was, with people applying NIST saying there's no rotations, etc. required, that guidance only applies if there's a number of other conditions that are on there, including the ability for automatic detection of breaches. There's a whole list of things that are in there that Windows doesn't actually satisfy. So when environments say we don't have this due to NIST, Active Directory and NIST don't actually go hand in hand. Now, in other applications, absolutely. In a pure Entra environment, absolutely. Legacy AD on-prem, and I'm sorry, Microsoft, because I've had this chat with Steve Siffis from Microsoft routinely, and he agrees with me. If you're on baseline legacy Active Directory, don't use the NIST standards. And the reason for this is in Windows, passwords are hash equivalent. So what that means is if somebody has a domain controller hash or a Kerberos ticket hash or anything else, they can authenticate even without the password. An Active Directory domain controller is 128 characters long for its password and it changes monthly. Trust passwords are about as long. If you've had a breach or you've had a domain admin leave, if you've had a backup admin leave, if you've ever lost a backup tape, you need to rotate all your secrets anyways. So routine secrets, especially when you get to a size of, say, a Fortune 100, you got 100,000 employees, you're not going to be able to keep on top of that, so you have to keep the rotation up. Now, if you're heavily salted and you have other techniques to stop the hash equivalency, yeah, fine, apply NIST, but NIST does not apply to AD. So the question is, what am I using for my crack station? Cloud. Because I work for IBM, we have our own cloud, and I have access to a giant pile of GPUs on demand. So I used to go spend a lot of money on buying GPUs and building systems. Here's the thing. A massive cracking monster requires heat, requires cooling, requires care and feeding. It requires being raised like a pet. My GPUs are treated like cattle. I bring them up when I just run them. They run for just as long as the crack job, and I shoot them when they misbehave. Any other questions?
You're using all these different styles of attacks. Are you ever running your stuff through Hashcat Brain?
So the question is, I'm using all these kind of attacks. Am I ever running this through Hashcat Brain? Hashcat Brain can't keep up when you're running 4 terahash per second of crack rate on NTLM. For things like bcrypt, absolutely, or slower hashes. But for AD, when I've got more horsepower than brains and this AI agent, I can spin up an entire data center and spin it back down again. I'm just going to throw hashes at it and make Hashcat go burr. Anybody else? I'm out of time. Apparently I'm out of time, so thank you all for coming and listening to my rant.